Recently, farmers have continuously recorded the presence of foxes around livestock farming areas. They often appear near barns, cross fields, or move close to poultry enclosures. At first, these sightings were scattered and did not attract much attention. However, over time, the number of fox encounters increased significantly. Many households began reporting missing poultry. In several cases, residents directly witnessed foxes approaching coops, grabbing prey, and quickly fleeing the area. This situation made farmers more alert and increased surveillance of the surrounding environment. After foxes began appearing more frequently around livestock areas, farmers observed them moving back and forth between forests and farmland. Many individuals were seen approaching fences and quickly retreating when humans were detected. The frequency of appearances gradually increased and was no longer random as before. Some foxes even appeared very close to poultry zones, posing a direct threat to livestock. This continuous presence showed that foxes were increasingly treating the area as a regular feeding ground, with a growing level of impact on farming activities. Through observation, farmers identified that the main reason foxes kept returning was the abundance of food sources. Free-ranging poultry, small animals, and leftover food around the farms became easy targets. After repeated successful feeding, foxes developed a habit of returning to the same area. This caused their presence to become more frequent over time. Some individuals even repeatedly appeared in the same locations over consecutive days. As food remained available, pressure on livestock areas continued to rise, causing increasing losses for farmers. After identifying the fox movement routes, farmers began deploying a widespread trapping system. Trap locations were carefully selected at trails, fences, and forest edge zones. Lures were used to increase the likelihood of attracting foxes. Instead of focusing only around barns, the trapping network was expanded to surrounding areas as well. The setup was carefully designed to avoid altering the animal's natural behavior. Once completed, farmers regularly checked the traps and recorded signs of fox activity in the area.
We caught him.
During the trapping process, several foxes were successfully captured at previously designated locations. The traps operated along familiar routes frequently used by the animals. After each successful capture, farmers reset the traps to maintain control efficiency. This process was repeated continuously to gradually reduce the fox population in the area. Some remaining individuals began avoiding locations with signs of danger, indicating that they were gradually adapting to changes in their environment. After multiple individuals were controlled, the number of foxes appearing around livestock areas decreased significantly. However, the remaining foxes began shifting their activity range. They no longer concentrated near the original locations, but moved to farther areas in search of food. Their tracks became less frequent, but spread across wider regions. This made monitoring more difficult than before. Farmers continued observation to update the situation and adjust control measures according to the animals' changing behavior. After a prolonged control period, the number of foxes around livestock farms decreased markedly compared to before. Poultry attack incidents also dropped significantly, helping farmers reduce production losses. Although foxes still exist in the wild, their presence in farming areas has become more controlled and stable.
Silently like a criminal. Yet the dole is classified as
Imagine a farmer waking up at dawn and finding nothing but scattered feathers behind the chicken coop. There were no loud noises during the night. No fences had been broken. Yet in just a few short hours, dozens of chickens had vanished. The culprit was the red fox, one of the most cunning predators in the British countryside. These animals move almost silently, use darkness to their advantage, and remember every weakness around a farm. Every year, thousands of poultry owners lose birds to these unexpected raids. But in areas such as Yorkshire, Devon, and Cornwall, local farmers have developed methods based on understanding fox travel patterns. Simple yet highly effective strategies that continue to be widely used today. Last winter, a farmer near Yorkshire began noticing something unusual.
2 pounds.
Every few nights, a few more chickens would disappear. An infrared camera finally revealed the culprit.
On the camera, calling the cubs up, so he's very much involved with looking after it.
A fully grown red fox appeared at almost exactly 3 o'clock in the morning. Instead of rushing straight toward the coop, it circled the area several times, carefully checking its surroundings. Once it was certain there was no danger, it quickly grabbed its prey and disappeared into the darkness within minutes. What worried the farmer most was the realization that the fox seemed to know the entire property by heart. While many people focused on building stronger fences or installing brighter lights, experienced farmers concentrated on something else: the fox's regular travel routes. After years of observation, they discovered that most foxes do not move randomly. Small paw prints in soft soil, flattened patches of grass, and gaps beneath fences all became valuable clues. One farmer once found a fox trapped beneath a fence, and that location helped him identify the route the animal frequently used. At that spot, he did not place bait out in the middle of a field. Instead, he positioned a specialized foothold trap directly along the fox's natural path. The trap was carefully concealed beneath a thin layer of soil and dry leaves. Every effort was made to minimize human scent and disturbance. Experienced trappers understood that foxes possess an extremely sensitive sense of smell. If they detect an unfamiliar scent or even a slight change in the ground, they may avoid the area for weeks. For several nights in a row, cameras recorded the fox following the same familiar route. It would stop, sniff the air, scan its surroundings, and continue forward. The distance between its denning area and the chicken coop remained nearly identical every night. Everything unfolded exactly as expected. On the sixth night, the decisive moment finally arrived. As the fox stepped into the location it used most often, the trap was triggered. In an instant, the animal was restrained before it could reach the poultry area. The following morning, the farmer checked the site and confirmed that the raids that had plagued the farm for months had finally come to an end. What made the result remarkable was that it did not rely on constant pursuit or endless searching. Instead, it relied on understanding the animal's behavior.
Let's let her go.
Meanwhile, the debate over predator control continues. Some people argue that foxes play an important role in controlling rodent populations in the wild. Livestock and poultry owners, however, believe they must protect their livelihoods from growing losses. Yet regardless of where people stand, most agree that foxes are among the smartest opponents farmers face. From Yorkshire to Devon, Cornwall, and rural communities across England, this quiet conflict continues night after night. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more fascinating stories in the future. Red foxes have proven that danger does not always come from strength alone. Sometimes it comes from patience, intelligence, and an extraordinary ability to adapt in the darkness.
A poultry farm began experiencing a problem when the number of chickens kept decreasing without any clear explanation. There are no strange noises, tracks, or eyewitnesses. Every morning, the farmer discovered that several chickens had disappeared. Although the losses were still relatively small, the repeated incidents over many days suggested that this was no longer a random occurrence. To find the answer, the entire camera system around the coop was reviewed. The footage quickly revealed a mystery that had puzzled the farm for days. The cameras showed that the culprit was a fox. What stood out was that it did not act recklessly. For several consecutive nights, the animal appeared only to observe. It moved slowly around the area, memorizing pathways, fence locations, and gaps that people rarely noticed. Only when everything became quiet did it approach its target. This cautious behavior suggested that it was not the first time the fox had searched for food near human settlements. For many farmers, foxes are among the most common predators around poultry operations. They are primarily nocturnal and usually leave their dens only when the surrounding area is quiet. If protection measures are not strong enough, chicken coops can become an attractive food source. Once a fox discovers a reliable supply of food, it often remembers a location and returns repeatedly using familiar routes. At first, many farms relied on guard dogs to strengthen their defenses. These dogs can detect unfamiliar animals from a considerable distance and immediately alert farmers when something unusual appears. Some livestock guardian breeds are even trained to patrol around barns and coops during the night. When foxes realize that guard dogs are constantly present, many choose to leave rather than risk approaching the food source. In addition, once their travel routes were identified, the farm owner began selecting suitable traps. Baits such as chicken, goat, or lamb meat were used to attract the animal's attention. On many farms, metal cage traps remain a popular option because they're easy to deploy and safe to use near residential areas. However, experienced farmers understand that the effectiveness of a trapping system depends less on the number of traps and more on where they are placed. A single trap positioned directly along the animal's travel route is often more effective than several traps placed randomly. For that reason, the most important part of wildlife control is not installing equipment, but studying behavior. Carefully observing movement patterns, appearance times, and approaches to target can significantly improve success rates while reducing both time and costs. Even after the traps were deployed, monitoring continued. Cameras operated every night to record any changes in the fox's behavior. Wild predators are highly adaptable to their surroundings. If they detect danger or encounter obstacles along familiar routes, they can change their path immediately. When that happens, trap locations must also be adjusted to maintain effectiveness. In many cases, simply making access to the chicken coop more difficult is enough to significantly reduce fox activity. This is why preventive measures are always considered more valuable than dealing with losses after they occur. A combination of continuous observation, tactical adjustments, and consistent pressure makes livestock areas far less attractive to predators. Alongside monitoring efforts, strengthening infrastructure is equally important. Fences should be buried deep enough to prevent digging. Coop doors must be securely locked before nightfall, and leftover feed should be cleaned up regularly to avoid attracting wildlife. Whether using traps, cameras, or guard dogs, the goal remains the same: reducing livestock losses while maintaining a balance between agricultural production and the surrounding environment. If you found this story helpful, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel to discover more real-world stories like this. At the edge of the farm, everything began not with loud attack, but with very small signs. A few chickens disappeared beyond the fence. Soft soil held delicate footprints like strokes of a drawing, and around the coop, the scent of the wild lingered in the early morning mist like a silent warning. At first, people thought it was only a fox passing through during the night, but when the tracks reappeared day after day, always along the same narrow trail, everyone realized the animal was no longer hunting at random. It had memorized the farm. Foxes do not rely entirely on strength. They survive through patience, memory, and an almost unbelievable sense of suspicion. A new fence, an unfamiliar light, or even a faint scent of a human is enough to make them change direction. That is why cage traps placed too openly quickly become useless. The fox could circle around them, sniff for a long time, even stand several meters away to observe, before disappearing back into darkness as if it had never been there. Because of that, the control team decided to switch to a steel foothold trap, not placed openly beside bait, but positioned directly along the fox's unavoidable travel route. This kind of trap required careful calculation rather than luck before setting it. They spent the entire morning reading the signs on the ground. Small tracks, pressed deeper at the front, show that the fox often shifted its weight onto one point while crossing a low mound near the fence. A nearly invisible trail revealed itself through lightly flattened grass, where the fox had passed so many times that the ground itself seemed to remember the rhythm of its footsteps. The trap was buried beneath a thin layer of soil at the exact spot where the fox was most likely to place its paw while slipping through the narrow path. Every movement was carried out slowly and discreetly. The disturbed soil was spread back to match its original color. Dry leaves were returned as though they had never been touched, and even broken blades of grass were carefully covered so nothing looked out of place. The goal was not to create an obvious trap, but to restore the familiar landscape so perfectly that the fox would notice no change at all. With an animal this cunning, a single unfamiliar scent, a patch of fresh dirt, or even a stone lying in the wrong place could make abandon the trail forever. Night fell slowly. Wind moved through the wooden fence, carrying the sound of rustling leaves and the smell of damp earth after rain. Infrared cameras captured the fox appearing at the edge of the woods, faint like a reddish-gray shadow gliding across the grass. It did not rush forward. It stopped, lifted its head, tested the air, then stepped forward one careful stride at a time, so cautious it almost seemed to measure every distance by instinct alone. That was the moment everyone held their breath. The fox moved past the first bush, paused beside the old fence post, then continued along the familiar trail. It had traveled this route too many times, enough to believe it was safe, but that very sense of familiarity became its weakness. The instant its front paw touched the concealed ground, the trap snapped shut. There was no prolonged chaos, only a sudden movement in the darkness, and then the fox was held on the very path it had once controlled. The following morning, the control team returned while mist still covered the grass in white. The fox was secured in a condition that allowed it to be handled according to local wildlife management procedures. For those who had worked in this field for years, the goal was never to create a cruel chase, but to prevent repeated damage, protect livestock, and reduce conflict between humans and wildlife. In nature, every species has its own way of surviving, and to control an intelligent animal like a fox, humans cannot rely on force alone. They must read tracks, understand habits, respect its instinctive caution, and act at the right moment. Because sometimes, to protect a farm, the most important thing is not where the trap is placed, but how deeply people understand the invisible path of predator.
I'm old school that way, you know. I've seen I will keep it so the people.
Yep.
Recently, residents living around livestock farming areas have frequently seen foxes appearing near animal pens, crop fields, and poultry enclosures. At first, these sightings were relatively rare and did not attract much attention. However, over time, encounters with these animals became increasingly common. Some individuals were observed moving along fences or crossing agricultural production areas. Others appeared very close to livestock facilities before quickly leaving the area. In several cases, foxes were seen carrying away domestic animals and rapidly escaping from the vicinity. After confirming the presence of foxes, local residents began monitoring the areas where they were most often seen. Numerous tracks were discovered along fences, field edges, and trails leading toward natural habitats. Through continued observation, people noticed that foxes frequently used the same travel routes. Some locations showed fresh signs of activity for many consecutive days. Additional evidence appeared along pathways connecting natural areas with places where livestock were kept. Gradually, residents were able to identify the primary routes used by the foxes. Through this monitoring process, residents realized that livestock farming areas were providing an attractive food source for foxes. Free-range poultry, captive birds, and other small animals became easy targets for these predators. After successfully finding food several times, the foxes began returning to familiar locations. Some individuals were seen repeatedly around the same areas over many consecutive days. This suggested that they had developed feeding habits near places where people lived. As long as food remained readily available, fox sightings continued to increase. As a result, losses suffered by livestock owners became increasingly noticeable. Once the routes most frequently used by the foxes have been identified, residents began deploying trapping systems at multiple locations. Most traps were placed along trails, near fences, and in areas where tracks were commonly found. Bait was used to increase the likelihood of attracting foxes to the trapping sites. Rather than concentrating solely around livestock enclosures, traps were distributed across a wider area to improve control efforts. After installation was completed, residents regularly inspected and monitored the traps. While these control measures were being maintained, numerous reports of foxes appearing in nearby residential areas were also recorded. Some individuals were found in gardens, storage sheds, or locations where food was kept. Their frequent presence in human environments indicated that their range of activity had expanded considerably. In addition, several incidents involved foxes becoming trapped in fences, drainage pipes, or small structures. Whenever such situations were reported, residents or local authorities worked to rescue the animals and safely release them. After the trapping program had been maintained for some time, the first results began to appear. Many traps were triggered at locations where fox tracks and activity had previously been reported. Several foxes were captured along routes that residents had monitored beforehand, beyond the areas immediately surrounding farms. Foxes were also trapped at more distant locations within the agricultural region. This demonstrated that their range was broader than originally believed. Placing traps at multiple sites significantly improved control efforts. Residents continued regular inspections to reduce the chances of foxes returning in search of food. Following an extended period of control efforts, the number of fox sightings around livestock operations declined significantly compared with earlier levels. As a result, attacks on domestic animals were greatly reduced. Although foxes still remained present in the natural environment, the damage experienced by local residents decreased and livestock production gradually became more stable.
There are predators that don't need the speed of a cheetah or the strength of a wolf to keep farmers awake at night. They are small, move almost silently, and rarely leave much evidence behind after each visit. Only when the sun rises and the chicken coop door is open do people realize that a few chickens have mysteriously vanished. The culprit is often not a ferocious beast, but the fox, a master of patience and strategy. With its keen sense of smell, remarkable memory for terrain, and ability to learn quickly, a fox can turn even the safest-looking farm into a familiar hunting ground if people let their guard down just once. It all began when several farmers repeatedly noticed unusual signs around their chicken coops. At first, there were only a few small footprints pressed into the damp soil, scattered chicken feathers, and dogs barking late into the night. Infrared trail cameras were soon installed to uncover the mystery. After only a few nights, footage of the same fox appearing regularly confirmed every suspicion. What stood out was that it never rushed straight into the coop upon arrival. Instead, it quietly walked along the fence, stopping several times to sniff the air, scan its surroundings, and then silently slip away. It seemed that each visit was nothing more than a mission to gather information for the real hunt yet to come. The wildlife control team then shifted its focus to studying their opponent's behavior. More cameras were placed along animal trails, the edges of dense brush, and dirt paths frequently used by wildlife. After nearly 2 weeks of observation, a clear pattern began to emerge. Each time it appeared, the fox crossed the same stretch of short grass before following the tree line and circling behind the coop. It rarely ventured into open ground, always taking advantage of natural cover to conceal itself. Even more remarkable was the fact that it placed its feet in almost exactly the same spots night after night, demonstrating an extraordinarily precise memory of its route. Once the fox's travel route had been identified, a new plan officially began. A steel foothold trap was carefully positioned along the path the fox regularly used. The hardest part, however, was not setting the trap, but making everything appear as though no one had ever been there. The top layer of soil was meticulously restored, dry grass and fallen leaves were returned to their original positions, and every footprint was carefully erased. Those carrying out the operation took great care to leave behind as little human scent as possible, knowing that even the slightest change could make the fox suspicious and force it to choose a different route. The days that followed became the ultimate test of patience. The cameras continuously recorded the fox passing by the trap's location. Some nights it walked past without hesitation, while on others it stood motionless for several minutes, carefully examining everything around it. It seemed to be checking whether anything in its familiar environment had changed. This battle which stretched on for night after night, and every time a fox turned away and disappeared, the wildlife control team reviewed every second of footage, adjusting even the smallest details. Then, on a misty morning when the fields were still blanketed in fog, the long-awaited moment finally arrived. The camera sent an alert reporting unusual movement. Fresh tracks led directly to the location that had been prepared days earlier. After weeks of observation, analysis, and patient waiting, the plan had finally paid off. Success did not come from the trap alone, but from understanding how the fox thought, how it chose its routes, and how it responded to every subtle change in its environment. This story shows that protecting livestock is about far more than building stronger fences or relying on advanced equipment. More importantly, it requires the ability to interpret the clues that nature leaves behind. In the wild, the fox has long been a symbol of intelligence and adaptability. And that is precisely why overcoming such an opponent demands far more than strength alone. In the end, patience, experience, and the ability to observe nature with meticulous attention to every detail are what truly make the difference.
For several weeks in a row, a red fox was frequently spotted around the livestock area behind a rural farm. Under the cover of the quiet night, it silently moved along the fence line, using darkness and dense vegetation to conceal its presence. At first, the losses were minor and difficult to notice. However, over time, more and more poultry began disappearing, leading the farmer to suspect that a predator was repeatedly entering the property. After many nights of observation, surveillance cameras finally captured footage of the fox near the chicken coop. The animal moved with extreme caution, often stopping several times to scan its surroundings before approaching its target. Thanks to its adaptability and survival instincts, it quickly identified weak points in the farm's defenses. Seeing the fox carrying prey away from the property provided clear proof of what had been causing the losses for so long. Once the culprit had been identified, the farmer devoted more time to studying the fox's behavior. Cameras were installed at multiple locations around the property to track its movements and activity patterns. After several days of monitoring, a clear pattern emerged. The fox almost always followed the same route when approaching the livestock area. It typically traveled along the back fence, crossed a narrow trail, and continued through dense brush before reaching the poultry pens. Repeated footprints found in soft soil further confirmed this behavior. Each location was carefully documented and combined into a detailed map of the fox's activity range. Using this information, the farmer began selecting the most effective locations for trap placement. The goal was not only to catch the fox, but also to avoid making it suspicious or altering its natural behavior. Traps were placed in areas the fox frequently traveled through. Locations near fence lines, narrow pathways, and openings between patches of brush were given priority. Carefully prepared bait was positioned inside the traps to maximize their appeal. Throughout the setup process, every effort was made to minimize disturbance and keep the surroundings as natural as possible. Each trap was thoroughly inspected before being activated to ensure reliable performance throughout the night. Once the trapping system was fully deployed, monitoring continued. Cameras recorded several occasions when the fox approached the trap locations, but maintained a cautious distance. This suggested that the animal had noticed changes in its environment and had become more wary. In response, the farmer adjusted the strategy by relocating several traps and introducing new bait with stronger attraction. After many days of careful monitoring and adjustments, the effort finally paid off. During an early morning inspection, the farmer discovered that a trap near the rear pathway had been triggered overnight. The area around it was covered with tracks and disturbed soil, indicating that the fox had struggled to escape after being caught. A closer inspection confirmed that the fox had been successfully captured. Capturing the fox marked the end of a long period of losses on the farm. In the weeks that followed, poultry numbers remained stable and normal operations gradually returned. At the same time, The farmer continued maintaining surveillance systems, reinforcing fences, and regularly inspecting vulnerable areas around the property. These measures not only provided better protection for valuable livestock, but also reduced the risk of future wildlife intrusions.
For many consecutive days, livestock owners in the area repeatedly reported poultry disappearing without any clear explanation. However, as the number of missing birds continued to increase, residents began paying closer attention to what was happening around their farms. During several inspections, they directly observed a fox appearing near the poultry enclosures and quickly leaving whenever it noticed people nearby. These repeated sightings, combined with the growing losses, made it clear that measures would be needed to control the animal. After confirming the fox's presence, local residents began monitoring its activities more carefully throughout the area. After many days of observation, they noticed that the animal frequently used the same routes when traveling between natural habitats and nearby farms. Fresh tracks often appeared along fences, field edges, and areas covered with shrubs. Several narrow trails also repeatedly showed signs of fox activity. By documenting these locations, residents gradually identified the areas most frequently visited by the animal. This information later became an important foundation for control measures that were implemented. Through continued observation, many people realized that the fox had adapted remarkably well to living near human settlements. Instead of remaining only in wild areas, it increasingly approached places where food was easier to obtain. Livestock farms, food scraps, and small domestic animals became attractive targets for the predator. Once a reliable food source was found, the fox often returned to the same location repeatedly. Its adaptability allowed it to quickly become familiar with the new environment. As a result, the risk of damage to local livestock operations continued to increase over time. After identifying the main travel routes, residents began installing traps at several different locations. Areas near fences, trails, forest edges, and places where tracks were frequently found were given priority. Bait was carefully prepared and placed to attract the foxes. Throughout the setup process, the surrounding environment was left unchanged to avoid altering the animal's natural behavior. Rather than relying on only a few isolated traps, residents distributed them across multiple locations to expand the area of control. Once installation was complete, they began monitoring the system and waiting for results. After many days of maintaining control system, several traps were triggered in areas that had previously shown significant signs of fox activity. The captures indicated that the selected locations had been chosen accurately. However, residents continued to discover fresh tracks and new signs in other areas. This suggested that additional foxes were still active in the region. As a result, the trapping effort was expanded to include fields, forest edges, and routes frequently used by the animals. The goal was to minimize their ability to continue accessing livestock areas. During the following days, additional traps were triggered at locations that had been monitored in advance. Foxes appeared along their familiar travel routes and were captured when approaching the baited areas. Some animals were caught in zones situated between natural habitats and human settlements. The widespread placement of traps increased the chances of controlling foxes that remain active outside the farms themselves. These continued results demonstrated that a strategy based on understanding fox movement patterns could be effective. Residents maintained their control efforts in order to reduce future losses. After many days of implementing control measures, the number of foxes appearing around the area declined significantly compared with previous levels. As a result, attacks on livestock also became noticeably less frequent. Although foxes could still be found in the surrounding natural environment, the damage experienced by local livestock owners was reduced, helping farming activities become more stable once again.